This is day one of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union ICT Symposium being held here at the beautiful Sandals Resort in Antigua and Barbuda. Delegates from all across the region gathered here to focus on a smart Caribbean. From where you sit as Secretary General of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, what does a smart Caribbean mean to you?
Well, I'd like to think about the smart Caribbean in the context of the single ICT space. That term that we use, smart, it is the vision of development that is enabled by information and communication technologies and the Internet of Things. It's a convergence of the power of technologies that will create opportunities to do things differently and to transform every area of endeavor, from governments down to the man on the street.
Do you think the concept of a smart Caribbean could be used as a strategy for sustainable development?
Absolutely. It has to be part of our strategy for sustainable development. We are in an age of rapid technological innovation, and you are seeing the changes in how we live and how we work at a very fundamental level. Unfortunately, we are consumers of the technology, and we need to move from that position of just consuming to creating. But one of the challenges I think that we face is that we do not believe in our own capabilities. We have the intellectual capacity. Why haven't we used it to create new types of business, to capitalize on the potential of the technology that is readily available? And I think it has to do with our mindset and how we view ourselves. And I think our greatest challenge at this time is overcoming those mindsets that keep us boxed into a framework that doesn't have to be there, that is not there, but it is really, we are boxed in by our minds. And if we could just use our imagination and believe in the power of our own ideas and our thoughts, that would help tremendously in making us, in enabling us to be the innovators and not the consumers.
So do you think that the CTU and the other ICT agencies / companies can get that message across, whereas we stop consuming and we start creating and start enabling? Are we on that path?
I think there are a number of agencies in some of the countries. There are thrusts towards fostering innovation. But I think a whole lot needs to be done, and especially at the level of the leadership. Now, I'm going to get sort of personal and my views at this point in time. In the days of slavery, and I have to go back to that, you find a slave could not, he was not free to express his opinion. He was not free to experiment and try things. To make an error could be fatal. It could result in the loss of a hand, a foot, an eye, who knows, an eye, who knows, right? That was the environment, so that even if they had great ideas, because they were slaves, they were bound to keep silent and say nothing, because they couldn't even appear to be smarter than their masters. All of those had dire consequences, right? Those inner workings have been passed down. So we have a bunch of supposedly liberated, free people, but their minds are still in those days when you were not allowed to make.
Afraid to jump outside of.
That's right. And making a mistake is a big thing in the Caribbean, right? Nobody wants to make a mistake.
It's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. You learn from it and move on, but that is not how it is viewed. So you find people tend to be very reticent. They're not willing to step out there and take risks. It's a great idea. Everybody outside will pick up this idea and run with it, but we are not empowered to launch out and try something different. And the difficulty I think that we're experiencing in the Caribbean, we're doing the same thing over and over and over, things that have ceased to work for us a long time ago, and we're still doing it. And then we're wondering why we're not developing.
So let's take it now to levels of satisfaction. Are you satisfied with the ICT infrastructure at this point in time in the region?
Yes, I think there have been tremendous investments in infrastructure, but we can do a lot more. There needs to be a lot more. But my question is, there's a lot of technology already available. Yes?
Use it.
What are we doing with it? Right? I think there may be issues of extending the broadband infrastructure so that to enable people to do more. But the point of the matter is we have technology available to us, and what are we doing with it? So we know more about Beyonce and Kim Kardashian than what's happening in the next country, right? So we have issues, content, our own local content. We have to develop that industry, and we have a rich cultural heritage, right? We should be exporters of our content, of our images, of who we are. There are tremendous opportunities. And we need to spark the imagination of our citizens of the possibilities that ICT presents, possibilities in terms of jobs, and how do you leverage this technology to capitalize on our inherent talent. And we have tremendous talent in this region. It's heartbreaking. There's a lot of talent out there, but no support for it, because we place a higher value on what comes from the north than what is our own, right? And I think there's a lot of work to be done in terms of sparking the imagination of our citizens as to what's possible, and to encourage them to explore and encourage them to try. And even if it means failing, you get up and go again. There's nothing wrong with that. Learn from the mistake. And those are the sort of messages. It's really not about technology. At the end of the day, it is the mindsets and the people and how they perceive themselves as Caribbean people. Can't we come up with ideas or solutions for the challenges we face? And these are questions that we have to ask ourselves. Why is it that we are constantly looking outward, right? I'm not saying that you can't take ideas and so on and so forth, but we have the capacity to come up with the solutions that are right for us. We do it in our households, yes? And this constant looking for someone else to tell us what to do, to develop, to give us the money to develop, it's just completely upside down as far as I'm concerned. And we absolutely need to explore the traditional means of funding what we need to do. And I'll give you an example, the susu. I think they call it lend hand in Jamaica, and yes, you have, right? Susus have built houses. They've bought cars, they've educated children, they've done all sorts of things. Can we extend such a concept to the governments of the region? If we're talking about a single CARICOM ICT space, do we need to go and ask people for money to do what we want to do for ourselves? Can't the governments come together in a higher level of a susu arrangement and fund our own stuff?
How far do you think we are from that in terms of taking it from a national level to a regional level where we have all the bodies coming together?
It absolutely has to happen. I know, unfortunately, we've been talking about integration and functional integration in the Caribbean single market and economy forever. But information and communication technologies makes these things the potential to be a practical reality possible. And we have to capitalize on the capabilities of the technologies now to foster this level of integration. But we have to believe in our brothers, and we have to trust our countrymen from across the region if we're going to make this work. And those, again, it goes back to how we view ourselves as Caribbean people, right? And how we perceive ourselves in the big scheme of things. There's no goodwill out there.
It's within you. You have
right? And yes, and where is it going to start? Exactly. And those are the messages. We could talk about technology from now till the cows come home, as they say. But until we start asserting ourselves as Caribbean people with ideas and convictions about who we are, right? And what needs to be done, until we reach to the point where we say, you know, this, you see what we've been doing for the last 100 years? It used to work back then, it no longer works. What do we need to do to get right? So there are a lot of things that it's not just about the technology. The technology is wonderful, yes? And the potential it presents is wonderful. But there are some more fundamental things that we have to address, even as we try to leverage the potential of the technology.
This very well-oiled machine that we call the CTU, and of course this ITC Symposium here in Antigua and Barbuda, what is your expectation, not only as Secretary General, but as a participant, regular person, regular Jane, what do you expect to come out of this?
Well, the main purpose is to make people aware of the phenomenal changes that are taking place in the industry and the opportunities they present. But more than that, we want to galvanize action. Mm-hmm. We're wonderful talkers.
Yes. Walk
yes.
the walk.
And yes, wonderful talkers. But we've reached a stage we have no more talking to do. Yes, yes. It's time for action. And the heads of, as I mentioned earlier, the heads of CARICOM governments, they approved the roadmap for the single ICT space. Yes. The smart concept is going to make a great contribution to the realization of that space. But people have to be made aware. People have to understand. The decision makers have to appreciate, this is potentially where we can go and what we can do, and then they have to act. You know, move beyond the old talk and get with it, right? And I don't think money, or the lack thereof, is an excuse for not getting on with it, because the longest journey starts with a step. Yes? And the other thing is that we may not have money, but we could think. How do we make use of the resources that we already have? How do we leverage what we have in our hands to get going? And these are things I don't think, I've seen it too many times. When you put a plan forward, the first thing, who's going to fund this?
That's always the first question.
That's the default. That's the default question. And I don't think it has to be that way. We can start, even with the smallest thing, do it well, demonstrate that it works. And you'd be surprised. Success, it brings more success.
Yeah.
People want to be
Yes.
part of something that is positive and working and making a difference.